That's background for the text today, and here we go. 6 days before the Passover. Remember what the Passover is. 6 days before the Passover, Jesus came to Bethany, the home of Lazarus, whom he had raised from the dead. What an intro. Hey, I'm going to go hang out with Lazarus. Remember that guy? I raised him from the dead. There they gave a dinner for him. Jesus had a party in his honor. Martha served, and Lazarus was one of those at the table with him. Mary took a pound of costly perfume made of pure nard, anointed Jesus' feet, and wiped his feet with her hair. The house was filled with the fragrance of the perfume. But Judas Iscariot, one of his disciples, the one who was about to betray him, said, "Why was this perfume not sold for 300 denarii and the money given to the poor?" Now he said this not because he cared about the poor, but because he was a thief. And he kept the checkbook, basically, and he used to steal what was put into it. Jesus said, "Leave her alone. She bought it so that she might keep it for the day of my burial. You always have the poor with you, but you do not always have me." The gospel of the Lord. Please be seated. First slide. Take a look at this scene. What is that scene? Jesus, guys, and it looks as though, according to that particular Renaissance period, there might be men and women gathered there, and especially the one whose dress is off her shoulder. Scandal. And she's doing the absolutely unheard of. But think about the artist. Where was the artist when the artist was painting this? What was going on in the artist's mind? That is one unbelievable sensual scene. Or am I the only one in the room that thinks like that? Go, Jesus! But who is this woman? Who is she? Who is this woman? Described in all 4 of the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Who is this woman? So we start with the Gospels. We start with the documents. We start with the stories that would have been written about her. In Matthew and Mark, Jesus' hair is involved in this story. An unnamed woman, unnamed in Matthew and Mark, unnamed woman enters into the room. This is Simon's house, the Simon we know, Simon Peter. Pours an expensive ointment over his head. Over his head. It happens during the last week of Jesus' life. And according to Matthew and Mark, it's somehow tied to the preparation for his burial. Luke's version happens in a different Simon's house. Not Simon Peter, but Simon the Pharisee. Jesus is eating supper, and again, this woman enters in, not known by name, widely known of suspect character. I never know what they mean by that. Depending upon what preacher you listen to, you're talking about someone that does pay for play. And I mean, we've got that today, right? The oldest profession. Sometimes it's about human trafficking, something that's much more on our radar these days. It's not only in the big cities out west. It happens in our own back door, too. But I know I won't talk about that today. Or is this the woman who just simply likes to slink around bars and pick up guys with no money involved? Or is just someone that likes pleasure? I don't know. Do you ever think about who this Mary might be? And do you ever think about who the author was that wrote those particular views and those particular interpretations? Can you see from their lives and from their context what they might write about the one? Wouldn't most of us say, isn't that woman exploiting herself? Or in fact, is she exploiting the other person? There's so much more to this story, I think. Now, in John, we have an entirely different story. In John's version, we learn the woman's name. We know that it's Mary, and we know that she is sister to Martha, and that she is sister to Lazarus, the one that Jesus raised and brought back from the dead. Here we see Mary anoints Jesus' feet, not pouring anything over his head. After the Pharisees and the chief priests have already determined, they decided that they were going to kill him. And some believe that this text is really about Mary anticipating that death, and maybe even perhaps how violent. And before too long, remember, Jesus is the one doing the feet washing. And in doing so, he, like Mary was the first to it. It's not unusual to see the women getting there before the men. He shows them how we're supposed to love and how we're supposed to serve. Now, all four of these stories have a couple things in common. All four of them reveal somewhat shock. They reveal to the people back then things that should not have happened, and they reveal to people today just maybe a little bit of confusion. You know, what's up with this lady and what's she doing? The disciples, however, clearly are appalled. This is a woman who, back in that picture, she let her hair down. Look out for those women that let their hair down. And she was touching a rabbi. You don't do either. Apparently, they didn't have a good human resource department back then. So it wasn't that the disciples were appalled over. They were appalled because how can you justify doing this thing that you did? This is an extravagance. This is a year's wages that you just wasted on this guy. It's a gratuitous gift. And if you can get there, it should make you feel uncomfortable. When is it that someone does something for you that you feel like it is just beyond what you deserve, beyond what you should have been given? Someone fusses. In Africa, I end up at a table, and at that table, I'm not eating what they've prepared because the doctors back here said, Bob, whatever you do, don't eat the vegetables, don't eat the fruit, be leery of the parasites, and especially in the particular area where you're going to be. So the whole team, you know, we're beginning to catch on, because when we went to the market, we're beginning to catch on that one little piece of citrus fruit that was on the table cost them probably 2 to 3 months of their earnings. And to find an egg, unbelievable, what a find, an egg. Those chickens are skinnier than I used to be. Those chickens have no meat on their bones. But they would kill the chickens for their guests from America. I told you about the time that I said, you know, you can take those eggs and you don't just have to throw them in a fire and cook them that way. And they didn't catch on to, you can put them on boiling water and make a hard-boiled egg or a soft-boiled egg, and they didn't know what a poached egg was. But I talked to them about scrambled eggs, and remember the story? I'm pretty sure I told you about that. They took 3 or 4 of these eggs. I mean, that must have cost a fortune. And they scrambled them up, and they used the whole frying pan, and this omelet that I was served, this egg was served to me, and I'm trying to figure out what in the world is sticking out of it. And I'm thinking it must be cheese. You know, I'm back in the United States, cheese. They don't have cheese. Here, it's the shells. I didn't tell them. You just use the inside, not the shells. So now what do? I've got this 3-4 egg omelet, and I don't want to be disrespectful. So I gave it to Luca, the driver, and said, my belly hurts right now. Would you please eat this? So as we drove to our mission point where we were going, Luca is just driving and munching away and munching away and munching away. And you hear these shells, and I'm just thinking, I didn't know what to do. I was conflicted. Because part of me thought, just eat it. Just eat it. But heck, I don't even eat onions, much less eggshells. I don't know. I think what I was feeling, the extravagance and the amount that they were spending, was this. Ouch. Ouch. I did not know what to do. I didn't know what to do when the little old lady that drove the little old broken down car that would come to church in her little, very, very old dresses that had been repaired many, many times. I didn't know what to do when I recognized that they were the highest contributor, and asking, she said, but I was taught that you should tithe. And I learned early on that what was once hard for me to do, tithing, giving 10%, and for this person, it was the big amount, right? The gross amount, not the take-home pay. I learned. And the more I learned about God's love for me, and the more I learned about my love for God, the more I wanted to give, and the less I felt the need to want anything else. And the hundreds of thousands of dollars she left behind for her church to grow a ministry that she found, where she found her true love in Jesus Christ. That's worthwhile feeling ouch. But it made me wonder, how do I, as a teacher in the church, how do I encourage folks to think beyond their cars and their houses, and in Judas's case, the common purse? How would I ever be able to do that? And the only way I know how to teach stewardship, true stewardship, the only way I know how to get past a dynamic where a congregation will say, we don't do commitment cards, we don't do pledge cards, we tried that, we got pushback. Well, you have to have enough courage, ovarian strength, if you will, to love deeply enough to push back even harder, so that people can actually begin to see when we hold on too tightly, we ultimately create a disaster, and we create loss. Loss of our own identity, loss of who we are, loss of who we're supposed to be, because we're too busy thinking about what we have and not thinking what we should do. Again, the disciples were not commenting about this woman's behavior. They were commenting about what she had done. And the disciples, the closest to Jesus, physical proximity, didn't get stewardship. They didn't get it's an all in and everything in, and that Jesus never asks for 10%. So if you've been taught tithing is 10%, your teachers were wrong. Tithing is 100%. It's all in. It's 100% of what you do. So if you buy your car, to the glory of God, buy your car and use it to do ministry. If you buy your house, let your house be a place of ministry and sanctuary. If you have clothing, then let your clothing keep you warm and keep you fresh. If you have a fishing rod or a boat or a camper or jewelry or whatever, to the glory of God. Not that you can't be thankful, but maybe you just don't know yet how to be thankful. Tithing. The Lord has been so good to us here at St. John's. So good. And I'm watching with joy the radical generosity of our finance team and members of the council and key leadership in our congregation, making absolutely certain that we do what we need to do to be who we are, God's children, who have hearts to be generous. Gabrielle Gallimberti was a part of a project called Toy Stories, photos of children from around the world and their favorite things. He went to 50 different countries. And what he found out when he was taking pictures, just accidentally, he started taking pictures of some kids and their toys because they were so proud of them. And so he just kept the photo album going. And when he got back home, when the project was over after 2 years, of living on sofas and couches and whatever they call that, he learned a bunch of things. He learned that the fewer the toys the child had, the less possessive he or she were with them. And in poor countries, kids don't seem to care too much about their toys. They play in a different way than kids in developed nations. They run around and they share one ball between them, and they truly share it, and they treasure it. I experienced that in Africa. It was anything and everything. They would make a way to have fun with a paper cup. They would make a way to have fun with napkins that we had stuffed in our backpacks that we brought from the States. They would take anything and they would keep it and treasure it. But what he learned was that not only were children's toys connected to their socioeconomic status, but they were connected to their parents' careers and their parents' aspirations. So if you had a musician for a parent, it was likely that the toys would have been toy instruments. If you had a cab driver parent, it's likely that the toys would include a fleet of little cars. But the lessons that he learned, and he said, I didn't set out to create a book on moral tendencies or behaviors that were predisposed by our socioeconomic class, but he said that it seems that the more we have, the more possessive we become. The more we have, the more protective we become. And when we are confronted, those of us who have so many possessions, with someone that wants us to give things away and to share things, we fight back. We fight back more about that than we do about those things that are constitutionally our rights. We fight back because they're ours. That's my car, that's my house, that's my endowment fund. The Lord giveth and the Lord taketh. We hold back. We save the perfume for ourselves, for a rainy day, for a cause that we deem deserving. When we are gifted and we hold back, we're one step away from disaster. So let me go back for a moment. Did Mary count the cost? Did she count the cost? Did she think of her family? Was it an action of impulse? I don't know, but I wonder if Mary's story included thinking back through her family history, coming to terms with her history, that God found a way to help her people through the mighty raging waters, protect her people from those who wanted to cause harm. Was it that she, knowing Jesus and Jesus' willingness to heal others, maybe that's why she was so extravagant? Or maybe because her own brother was one of those who was healed, cured. Maybe it was just as simple as Jesus loved all people, including one that was of suspect character. God, how I love suspect character people so much more than the saints. How about you? I'd much rather work with the people that know that they are, well, thank you, people of St. John's. The current total is $14,757 raised for Ukraine. Love thy neighbor. Thank you for those members of our congregation through the decades that have served at the Pottstown Soup Kitchen. And go and pack backpacks to make sure students have food. Come to the table again last night, the Potato Project. But I want to thank you. I want to thank all of you. You're not going to be able to read this. We couldn't get this thing all on here, and I didn't want to break it up. I want to thank you for all of you who contributed at the time of your remembering my 35th anniversary of ordination. For those of you who contributed anything to that fund, every penny of it went to Caritas Foundation. In 2013, they repaired 350 wheelchairs in a whole year. And in 2019, they repaired 3,500. The 12 technicians who have disabilities who sit in wheelchairs themselves now have full-time, fair wage employment. This is in Mexico, in a very, very, very impoverished area. Trust me, these people aren't trying to get across the border. They wouldn't want to come to the United States. They're really happy right where they are. Because look what happened. Caritas came in and they helped them. They helped them. They didn't do it for them. They didn't do it because of them. They saw a need, and as sisters and brothers, as siblings in Christ, they worked together. And it's not even a faith-based organization, but faith is all over it. Working in highly visible public areas, people have learned that people with disabilities, family members in the general public, see people carrying out skilled work has had a profound, life-changing impact on the future opportunities for all people with disabilities. And it is worth mentioning the reduce, reuse, recycle. You have a wheelchair problem in the United States, you just go get a new wheel. But what about the people that can't afford a new wheel? And what about the people that are Willie Nelson fans? How many of you are Willie Nelson fans? You know what it's like, right? If you break a leg and you got to go on a crutch, your wheels are tripped up and you got to use that crutch to get around. But what about when you sit in one of these chairs? I mean, they're Willie Nelson fans, right? The wheel busts and you picked a fine time to leave me, loose wheel. The wheelchairs are not only repaired, but they're customized and they're fit both to the special needs of each user, as well as to their personal aesthetic preferences. Well, I live in Boyertown, Pennsylvania. I work in Boyertown, Pennsylvania, the United States of America. Not too far from the largest population, 1/3 of the United States population. I'm in that little circle, half a circle. And I can't walk down the streets of Boyertown with a wheelchair all that easily, because the streets of Boyertown and the sidewalks of Boyertown are horrible. Just take a walk someday and see what it's like. I got wheelchairs here. Borrow one. Push someone downtown in a wheelchair. I want to thank you for every single person who said yes to the invitation to send a few bucks in to celebrate my anniversary and to let you know every penny of it went away from here to people in need. So thank you, thank you, thank you. What did you get out of this sermon? Certainly not a prodigal son sermon, right? Or is it? Which one is the prodigal? Martha or Mary? Which one are we? If your face, it's interesting to watch you now, because you're all paying attention. Some of you are restless, good. Some of you are resisting, great. And some of you are all in, because you know that you are on the right track. You are learning stewardship without anybody jamming it down your throats. You're learning what it means. Because I have never, ever, ever seen a U-Haul in a cemetery. You cannot take it with you.